These are the 7 levels of Final Destination death. Level 1. Trash deaths. Trash deaths often suffer from underwhelming execution, poor visual effects, or lack of creative context. They represent death's utilitarian side, prioritizing efficiency over spectacle. Candace's gym fall in Final Destination 5 involves a very elaborate mechanical buildup in a gymnasium, including a splintered beam and loose equipment surrounding a high-balance beam routine. The sequence is frequently noted as an example where the anticipation and complex setup far surpass the actual payoff. The death mechanism itself, a simple fall resulting in a snapped spine, is visually underwhelming relative to the suspense that preceded it. Audiences expected something more elaborate given the extensive setup. Instead, they get something with a huge buildup, very gruesome, but overall super stupid. Even for a movie, bodies shouldn't be breaking like that. Another death from Final Destination 5 was Dennis's. Dennis's death is swift and brutal, but lacks lasting dramatic consequence. He dies from a flying wrench splitting his face in a factory, resulting in an instantaneous death. Due to its speed and simple crushing nature, this death is often overlooked as a perfunctory means of clearing a character from the list. Honestly, this death is so forgettable that's why it's in level 1, and even legendary sequences contain trash deaths. The roller coaster decapitation from Final Destination 3's Premonition, though occurring within the highly cinematic Devil's Flight sequence, is cited for its reliance on basic speed gore and poor CGI quality. A passenger's head is cleanly sheared off by structural support beams as the derailed coaster speeds uncontrollably. While part of a legendary sequence overall, the low detail rendering of this specific trauma places it low on the aesthetic scale. Trash deaths ultimately demonstrate that death, when spectacle is not required, defaults to a quick, brutal cleanup. But at least trash deaths are quick. Level 2 deaths are absolutely useless. Level 2. Pointless deaths. Pointless deaths involve an extremely high effort-to-payoff ratio. The elevator decapitation from Final Destination 2 builds extensive tension with Nora Carpenter riding an elevator, while a worker struggles with a pallet of prosthetics and a loose hook nearby. The setup is highly drawn out, with multiple near misses and red herrings.
I can't hear you. What?
What is he? What?
A man with hooks is gonna kill you.
However, the resulting death is a swift decapitation. The dropped hook snags the elevator cable, causing the doors to close on Nora's neck, and the rising elevator instantly severs her head. The final act of decapitation is simple and quick, deflating the complex suspense created by the elaborate setup. Audiences expected something more creative given the time invested. Visiting the dentist in Final Destination 2 subjects Tim Carpenter to an intense, anxiety-inducing near-miss sequence inside the dentist's office, where vibrating tools and falling objects nearly cause him to choke on a toy or suffer injury from dental apparatus. After being saved from the internal dangers and escaping the office, he runs outside and is crushed immediately by a giant pane of glass dropped from a construction site above. The elaborate office-bound setup is completely nullified by the simple external crushing death that could have happened anywhere, but that was nowhere near anything like the next death, which, I won't lie, gave me nightmares for a very long time. The LASIK eye surgery sequence from Final Destination 5 featuring Olivia Castle is a textbook example of setup being superior to actual execution. The scene painstakingly builds tension around the possibility of horrific eye trauma using falling tools and faulty equipment. She manages to survive the internal machinery failures only to accidentally stumble out a high-rise window and fall several stories, ultimately getting crushed by a car on the pavement below. The extensive focus on surgical dangers is rendered irrelevant by the eventual death mechanism, illustrating a high disappointment ratio. The fundamental issue with pointless deaths is that writers prioritize the anxiety of the near miss and the intricacy of the machine over the visual creativity and lasting impression of the final execution. These overly complex setups at least involve accidents. Level 3 deaths happen because victims are complete idiots. Level 3. Stupid deaths. Stupid deaths are those where the victim's demise is a direct result of their catastrophic negligence, idiocy, or refusal to recognize painfully obvious danger. Ms. Luton's kitchen fire from the original Final Destination initiates her own complex and absurd end. The high school teacher pours vodka into a cracked mug, spilling alcohol onto her computer, which subsequently causes the monitor to explode and slash her throat. She slips on the spilled vodka trail, creating more chaos, and in a moment of panic reaches for a rag tangled in a knife block, causing a knife to impale her chest. The sequence is defined by a volume of ridiculous poor choices made in rapid succession before the house finally explodes. Each decision compounds the previous mistake, but fire is not done killing people yet. Evan's fire escape death in Final Destination 2 shows a character who heroically navigates a massive kitchen meltdown involving a stuck garbage disposal, grease fire, and burning materials. He successfully escapes the fiery apartment via the exterior fire escape, achieving what should be safety. His monumental error, which seals his fate, is his failure to maintain situational awareness after achieving safety. In his moment of relief on the fire escape, he looks up too late to notice a falling fire escape ladder that impales him through the eye. His stupidity lies in celebrating survival before actually reaching the ground. Sam Lawton in Final Destination 5 is a prime example. He's convinced he's beaten death by pulling off the kill for a life ritual, thinking it's his ticket to survival. So he confidently boards Flight 180 to Paris with his girlfriend, Molly, feeling like he's dodged the Reaper. Big miscalculation. Sam doesn't realize he's stepping right into Death's trap. That flight is the same catastrophic Flight 180 from the original Final Destination. When the plane erupts into chaos, explosions tearing through the cabin, Sam's caught in a fiery blaze and burned alive in moments. His plan to outwit Death drops him straight into the heart of the franchise's first disaster, proving he completely misread Death's unrelenting game. It's weird how all the stupid deaths involve fire. Maybe that's a sign? Either way, level 4 deaths are just super boring. Level 4, boring deaths. Boring deaths are those that, despite inflicting intense physical agony, fail to be visually arresting or creatively original. The tanning bed fire traps Ashley and Ashlyn in faulty tanning beds that overheat and ignite. While frequently cited as one of the most physically painful ways to die in the franchise, critics label it boring because burning is viewed as a generic and predictable mechanism in horror cinema, despite the intense, slow roasting scenario. The protective goggles melting into their eyes adds gore but does not elevate the underlying concept. We've seen people burn to death in countless horror films, making this feel derivative despite the tanning bed twist. Now, don't hate me. This is an iconic death and was well made, but to me, I just think it's kinda boring. As well as the next one, the gym weights and squat rack death follows a tension-filled buildup involving unstable equipment and distractions from a nearby accident. The death itself relies on simple crushing when Peter is performing a bench press and a weight plate slides off the unstable bar, crushing the back of his head. Although instantaneous and bloody, the mechanism is uninspired for the complexity expected in the franchise. Simple crushing deaths lack the creative spark that defines great Final Destination kills, but the execution is too rapid and marred by the film's generally low-quality visual effects. The victim is killed in a basic propane explosion and launched into the air where they are quickly atomized. The visual realization of the kill is lackluster, minimizing the impact of the implied complexity. Poor CGI makes an already simple death mechanism even less impressive. Generic deaths disappoint, but at least they're not morally neutral. Level 5 deaths felt good to watch. Dear FBI, please ignore what I just said. Level 5, deserved deaths. Deserved deaths are those that satisfy the audience's innate sense of moral justice, transforming death into a temporary instrument of catharsis. Hunt the pool drain victim from the Final Destination serves as the film's resident bully who visits the country club pool, preoccupied with counting illegal winnings from some scheme. His arrogant behavior and treatment of others makes his fate particularly satisfying for audiences. Unaware of the malfunctioning, highly powerful drainage system, Hunt dives into the pool. His body is pulled violently into the drain, and the film strongly implies that his internal organs are essentially sucked out of his body through the drain. The grotesque nature of the death matches his grotesque personality, but that was nowhere near as deserved as the next road. Isaac's acupuncture and Buddha statue death in Final Destination 5 targets a sleazy, opportunistic character. His punishment is tied directly to his greed as he attempts to steal money from a Chinese spa and acupuncture center. After suffering repeated impalement by acupuncture needles due to his frantic movements and falling off the treatment table, he stumbles outside in pain, only to be instantly crushed by a massive stone Buddha statue that falls from above. The ironic punishment for his lack of peace and moral integrity delivers perfect poetic justice. Wendy deserved her death way more, though. Wendy's final train death in Final Destination 3's epilogue represents the ultimate reclamation of Death's narrative authority. Although Wendy is the protagonist, her eventual death represents cosmic inevitability. Having constantly run from her destiny throughout the film, her final fate cannot be avoided. Wendy, Kevin, and Julie are killed simultaneously when a subway train derails and crashes into their car, ending the lingering narrative uncertainty decisively. Even protagonists cannot escape forever. In these instances, death is not merely restoring order, but delivering mechanisms tailored to inflict maximum poetic justice upon characters whose attitudes or actions have alienated the audience. Now, these deaths were super satisfying, but the next ones were super funny. Level 6, funny deaths. Terry Chaney's bus hit from the original Final Destination is the foundational funny death that set the template. Terry is engaged in a highly dramatic argument with her boyfriend, declaring with absolute certainty, "Death doesn't have a plan. We're not dead."
Enough! Both of you! They died and we lived! Get over it!
Immediately following this hubristic statement, she steps backward into the street and is instantly struck and obliterated by a fast-moving city bus that came out of nowhere. The comedic genius lies in the abruptness, the mundane mechanism, and the perfect timing that undercuts her confident dialogue. The bus arrives at the exact worst moment possible, making her declaration absurdly ironic. This death wasn't as funny as the barbecue explosion, though. Brian's barbecue explosion from Final Destination 2 involves a seemingly minor character at a family barbecue. The tension builds when his father casually references Brian's near-death experience on the highway, inadvertently signaling Death's arrival. The propane explosion is quick and violent, but the punchline is pitch black. The propane tank explodes, instantly killing Brian and launching his severed arm directly onto his shocked mother's picnic plate like some macabre piece of barbecue. The darkly comic image of the arm landing on the plate pushes the death into absurdist territory, but the roller coaster premonition was way funnier because it was so stupid. The roller coaster collapse premonition from Final Destination 3, while horrific, is so over-the-top, chaotic, and structurally complex that it's sheer absurdity borders on dark slapstick tragedy. The explosive structural failure of the Devil's Flight coaster and the sight of passengers flying through the air in impossible trajectories represent such massive theatrical spectacle that it generates nervous, almost comedic shock. The escalating chaos becomes so extreme it almost feels cartoonish. Now, the level we've all been waiting for. Level 7, Legendary Deaths. These are the most epic, coolest, best deaths from the entire franchise that absolutely made it massive. Starting with an iconic one, Flight 180's plane crash premonition from the original Final Destination established the core mythology, tone, and rules of death design. This sequence set the precedent for everything that followed, introducing the concept of the catastrophic, unavoidable disaster. The premonition, caused by structural failure and engine explosion, is a masterpiece of visceral, confined chaos. The breakdown involves hull breaches, explosive decompression, mid-air disintegration, and the final impact of the wreckage. Passengers are torn from their seats, baggage becomes projectiles, and the aircraft literally breaks apart around them. This scene taught audiences what Final Destination would be: inescapable fate delivered through realistic disaster scenarios. Route 23's log truck pileup from Final Destination 2's premonition is widely regarded as the most iconic sequence in the entire franchise. This highway disaster became a cultural touchstone that inspired real-world paranoia about driving behind logging trucks. The scene is praised for its masterful practical effects and suspenseful choreography, with multiple deaths occurring in rapid succession. The central mechanism involves the chain-holding logs on a truck snapping, leading to logs cascading onto the highway. One specific unforgettable death involves State Trooper Thomas Burke, watching helplessly as a massive log flies directly through his windshield, obliterating his upper body instantly. The sequence features cars exploding, vehicles crushing each other, and elaborate chain reactions that make the highway feel like a death trap. This scene permanently changed how audiences view logging trucks. Aaron's nailgun death from Final Destination 3, while surrounded by pointless setup elements, features an execution that's legendary due to its technical shock value and lasting impact on the franchise's reputation for extreme gore. After the rogue forklift incident causes her to trip, Aaron falls backward directly into a powerful pneumatic nail gun mounted on the hardware store shelf. The subsequent rapid-fire impalement of dozens of nails into her head and face was a visually groundbreaking effect that cemented the film's ultra-violent tone. The sound design of the nail gun firing, repeatedly combined with the visceral impact of each nail, creates an unforgettable moment of extreme horror. The bridge collapse from Final Destination 5's premonition marked a successful return to the high-stakes, large-scale chaos that defined the first two films. The North Bay Bridge failure sequence, caused by structural stress and wind conditions, is praised for its realism and sheer body count. The disaster involves victims being crushed by falling concrete, sliced in half by snapping suspension cables, and falling hundreds of feet to their deaths in the water below. The sequence features outstanding visual effects and choreography that makes every death feel inevitable and terrifying, reaffirming death's mastery in catastrophic mass events. If you enjoyed this and want to see a comparison of the most painful Final Destination deaths, click the video on the screen.